see everyone here. Thanks for having me, Taylor. So there are two themes that are evolving in the industry today, and they were echoed last week at the BMO conference coming out from most of the majors. And the two things that seem to really be coming out is, one, there's not really too many new greenfields, big discoveries anymore. There's nothing new that these guys have been investing in for the last 20 years as we've seen kind of prices skyrocket, but there's really not a lot of new and large, completely new discoveries out there. And the other one is an issue of grade. For the most part, people have been focusing on total ounces, big NAV numbers, and we're seeing with these intense inflation numbers, and we're seeing with the odd discount rates that we all use in the industry, that these things are not necessarily providing accurate measures for how we're going to do, because you can see that in the margins of most of the precious metals producers, that despite the fact that we're bumping up in terms of the price of metal, we're not really seeing a whole bunch of margins go up. What we're doing here at Sterling is we're focusing on green fields, big projects, big ideas, and big grades. And one of the reasons greenfields is so hard is because, as many of us probably know in the room, there's a lot of error that goes into it, a lot of testing. You got to deal with shareholders who aren't necessarily overly thrilled when you drill a hole that doesn't work. So you got to find a team that believes in it, and shareholders that believe in it too, which we have. But what we're looking at is a 12-kilometer long soil anomaly. We want to find something that geologically, some big crack in the ground happened that led to something very large. And at Sterling, we have a 12-kilometer long anomaly. We have grades in drill holes up to 1,600 grams silver, 8.5% copper, 3% antimony, up to 29% zinc, and 13% lead, and 3 of these being critical metals. So what we've done here is we've proven the scale and the grade, and we've also narrowed down this area of the world from a 12-kilometer long anomaly to an actual discovery, which is, of course, the issue in greenfields is usually you have a junior come in and kind of test it, or you have a major come in and drill fences. We've actually created a 1-kilometer long footprint of mineralization with some clear zones that could provide something very economic. And what makes Sterling unique among the world in terms of discovering greenfields is that this is right here in Canada. There is power across the project. You can drive through the project, and you're 30 minutes from an airport in the north of Newfoundland. So going through scale, when I'm talking scale, we're talking a 12-kilometer long soil anomaly. This is a copper in ground. These are up to 0.67% copper in soils. A number of these are over 1,000 ppm. So big grades of copper in a very clear anomaly that takes you basically from Wall Street up to Harlem, if anyone has spent so much time in Manhattan. So I like this image just because it brings context to the size of something that you're going for. And this is what we started with. And again, this is only what we've done to date. This thing is open to the north and to the south. And what's in the middle there is kind of marshy, so it's not that it stops, it's just that kind of runs out. This is supported also with trenching and with grabs, where you're seeing grades up to 15% copper and 1,500 grams silver in trenching. So the other thing you need in scale, so you have a big hunk of kind of dirt that carries some anomalous copper, silver, lead, zinc, and antimony, and then a world-class analog. When you look at the rock types, the way that antimony and silver relate to each other, the boiling temperature, which is very hot, and the quartz carbonate veining, we've had PhDs on our project compare this to the Keno Hill district, the Coeur d'Alene district, the Kootenay region, and again, this is something that's never been tapped before. So big analog, and just for some scale kind of context, the western side of Keno Hill, which was 12 kilometers, was 9 different deposits, went from basically about 60 meters depth down to about 350, and that produced 230 million ounces of silver from 1913 to 1990. So we're talking company makers all on its own. This is 100% owned by Sterling. So the other thing you need scale and you need grade. So in drilling right now, we've been able to narrow down the trenching across that 12 kilometers into this 1-kilometer area, and results thus far, rather narrow, a little bit all over the place, but what you're seeing already is really impressive grades. You see grades in quartz veins up to 29% zinc, 5% copper, and 1,600 grams silver. And then you're also seeing, in a completely different style of mineralization, which you see on the bottom there, the same 8% copper, 1,600 grams silver, and these big lead zinc numbers. What's really interesting here is that these two drill holes are a kilometer apart. One is in quartz veins, sulfides, and the other is this pure chunk of metal in sulfosalts. It's basically 100% metal. It dissolves in your hand in a way, and it's 2 totally separate pulses of mineralization, both providing you with 1,600 grams silver, these huge elevated grades of copper, and then the zinc and the lead seem to switch. So in the quartz veins, you see these really high sphalerite content, these big zinc numbers, and then when you come over to the sulfur salts, you see much more galena, a lot more lead, and but the same grades of antimony, copper, and silver. And why that's so important is that when you're looking at really great areas in the world, big deposits, big models, then usually what happens is you have these multiple pulses of mineralization. You have metal kind of attract metal in different ways over the millions of years that these things have been forming. And so when you have these two very distinct high-grade kinds of mineralization to go along with our low-grade brecciated dolostone, the house rock that is our third type, you can be sure that whatever is feeding this thing is quite large. And so what we've done here is we've created just a little bit of a video. This is the 1 kilometer strike that we've put together, this footprint, over just 2 years of drilling. So what we're gonna do first is focus in on the Heimdall zone. About an hour and a half drive north is the first place that the Vikings ever settled in North America, and the only place the Vikings actually settled in North America. So this is going quite choppy, but that's okay. Where the Vikings settled anyway, so it's an hour and a half north, so there's an element of Norse mythology, also a really good brewery called Ragnarok Brewing, about an hour away. And so we got kind of into that mode. Also the Marvel movies get me a little bit excited about it, and so we call this the Heimdall zone. So for those who don't know, kind of like the entryway into this big kingdom of mineralization, right? The Heimdall zone right now, through about 30 drill holes, give or take, is this 400 meter by 200 meter by 150 meter blob of mineralization. These shells right here, this is a leapfrog model, showing you the iso shells kind of projecting how each intercept would play out. The light pink right now, what you're looking at, is a 30 gram to 200 gram silver equivalent range shell. So pretty big range, so don't take this as a resource or anything. But what's important is the dark red. The dark red is the higher grade, plus 200 gram equivalent trends. And so what we started to see is it's kind of this big hunk of metal in the ground with two very distinct trend lines in the high grade areas. And so these quartz veins are kind of coming up, and through our drilling we've started to be able to see that they've pointed in a certain direction. Then this past year in about December, we put out the results of that sulfosalt vein, that one that you saw, that black rock, that replacement of dolostone. And in 5 holes, we've started to put together this completely new area, 500 meters north, first drill pass. We actually had to pause and stop drilling there because we had never seen 100% sulfosalts, and I haven't seen it in a lot of projects around the world. So we paused, saw what it was, we saw these grades were huge. And so this 1 kilometer footprint becomes very significant because you have high grades, different pulses of mineralization, and obviously a very big area of metal in the ground. And why that matters is what we paused our drilling, we kind of stepped back and we said, all right, what do you do next? And so what we ended up doing is we hired Quantech, said we're gonna go and try and get the best version of underground down to 2 kilometers that we can. We need to understand, we have scaled, north-south, but we don't really understand what's going on under the ground yet. There's been some gravity surveys, there's been some LiDAR, and some rough IP that's been done. But what we don't have is this really detailed understanding down to that 2 kilometer range, right? To understand what's feeding this thing, what are the structures that have led to it, and how do we find the source of this mineralization? Well, the Heimdall zone and this Heimdall North could provide a very nice starter pit, possibly something that's better than that. When you see these multiple pulses, these narrow veins, they're coming from somewhere. And so what we're doing right now is this survey, mapping out these mineralized structures, looking for these high areas of resistivity, for the silicification that comes with it, some chargeability to see where those sulfides pool, and basically matching that up with the trend lines at surface to give us a really good idea of where these things come together, they pool, and you start to find something that is pretty special. From there, the idea, of course, is that in this 12-kilometer long trend, you do it again and again and again. And so you have camp potential and then an actual idea of where we're going to start. So really big picture sort of thing. And what makes this unique is that we're here in Newfoundland. Canada is a wonderful place. The last place I was in Paraguay. It was a little bit different. This is great. The community is extremely supportive. You can fly into St. Anthony and drive to the project within 30 minutes. There's power lines that cross from the one side of the province to the other up here in the Great Peninsula. So power runs actually right through the middle of our property. And that picture on the left there, that's actually where we're the bottom of the Heimdall zone. So that road is an old logging road. The ease of access for this property can best be described as the way it was found. This was only found at the end of 2016. It was found by a local school principal who was out hunting with his son, looked to his left, saw a big blue boulder, said that looks really interesting, chipped it, drove down the coast, went to, found the guys at Altius Resources, gave them the rock, and it was 500 grams silver and 2.5% copper. And that's how this was found at the end of 2016. So when I say new, this is brand new. We have just come into this, but that is the ease of access for this thing, is that you can kind of drive through there, walk through there, and it's a wonderful place to be. And of course, who am I? My background is in finance. Don't listen to me, listen to the geologists on our team. Our head of exploration, Jeremy Niemi, Jeremy has a wonderful skill set whereby he has gone into past companies such as Noront and GoldQuest and taken them from kind of an initial drill hole or concept and then mapped them out into some really exciting discoveries. The Eagle's Nest at Noront, bringing Eagle in for $30 million in the Dominican with GoldQuest. He is able to take these initial ideas and build them out into very exciting projects. Noront right now is owned by Wyloo, and GoldQuest, if it wasn't in the DR with some serious permitting issues, would be something very special right now. Our advisory board is worth pointing out right here. Recently appointed, we have Dr. Stephen Piercy. Dr. Piercy is going to be the president of the Economic Society of Geologists. He is the head of geology at Memorial University. He said something really interesting to us the other day, actually, which was this is the first time he's seen that modern exploration techniques and deep, big thinking has actually been brought to the province, which is so interesting considering that Voisey is in Labrador and there's gold sprinkled everywhere around Newfoundland. Back in my days as an investment analyst, I kind of had Newfoundland on this checklist of don't go there because there's just gold sprinkled everywhere and everyone we always thought selective sampling was happening, and it's interesting because maybe just people weren't looking in the right places or spending the time to look deep enough. And I think that you're seeing with the Newfound Gold team and the discoveries that they're making and the Marathon developing, you're seeing some really cool stuff around the province that's happening, and we hope to continue that. The other advisor worth pointing out, Dr. Neil O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien was the Senior VP of Exploration for Lundin Mining for 20 years, and before that was a senior geologist at Cominco for 10 years. He actually in the 80s worked at Keno Hill for about 4 years. He has worked at probably 12 projects that can help us understand what's going on here. He has been a wealth of advice and is extremely excited about what we've got going on here. So the quality of the people who have come in recently specifically to what we have just speaks to the potential of what this greenfield high-grade exploration project can be. Just quickly on a cap structure, don't like touching on this for too much, but there's $3 million in cash, there's 69 million shares out, we've kept it relatively tight, and it's about a $14 million market cap. So we're focusing on big ideas, big exploration potential. We think that we are right at the point where after 2 drill seasons, we'll have something pretty special to approach this year. And at a $14 million cap, I think that there's a lot of upside to take that. So as we had said, there's doing this Titan Orion survey right now, mapping out these structures at depth, figuring out exactly where our next drill holes are going to be placed so that the best chance of success comes from it. And we're going to drill them and hopefully show that that this big footprint of mineralization at surface is fed by something that is just as big, if not bigger, with grades that are consistent and in line with what we're seeing. So thanks very much.